Exactly. Okay.
Saying for us to play with it, you guys can start.
What was that now?
You said for us to play with some of those settings.
Oh yeah.
I got nervous. I didn't want to mess up.
You on Active Directory?
Well, I didn't do that with my browser.
Oh, the browser security? Yeah. Yeah, you're okay on that. I mean, you can block websites from being browsed from our lab we're gonna do on Thursday. But beyond that, a lot of people don't know there's like parental controls and stuff in IE. Hey, how you doing? I guess that's the biggest surprise for students that have kids is they can use IE, and in conjunction with Group Policy Editor, if you block all other browsers from being ran but IE, you can use its built-in parental controls that are in it, which are pretty cool. And the new version of IE, I actually like the newest version on the 8. It's pretty cool. Some of the older versions, not so much. Hey, you doing? Does somebody else need to check in? Because I'm sorry, I was using this, getting this stuff ready here. How was your drive in? Slow?
It's genuinely slow.
Everybody's going so slow.
Oh yeah.
Packed.
5 miles an hour. I figured that it was the case. Yeah, there's an article about the robot in there. They did a good job. They actually did about a month ago. I totally forgot about it. And so yeah, you can share it with anybody you like. We are going to be using a robot at the end of this month at math competition over in the JCSM, and it's going to be like have a table. We'll put an RVC shirt on it and wheel it around. Freak some kids out while we're doing it. But no, we're looking forward to that. Do what now?
Is this for the high school math?
Yeah, it is for the high school. Yeah, yep. Which I didn't realize they had many. It's on a Saturday. I didn't realize how many schools were represented. Something like 38 schools come.
Well, I know 15 years ago we came up here from math team.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
it's pretty awesome.
I was only there for one of them, but yeah.
It was pretty awesome. I was pretty impressed.
I did too.
And I need to make an announcement this Thursday at 6 o'clock, starting downstairs, is the IEEE, which we actually talked about in 110 class last week, is having an event. I just found out about it this Thursday. They're going to be talking about network security, and it's $5 for non-members, but they feed you. You get a good presentation on IE security. I mean, just on network security in general, and it's a local company. The CEO of a local company is going to be presenting at the event, so I definitely recommend it. Again, it's this Thursday downstairs. If you take the elevators or stairs down, it's the far rooms against the building this way. It's all the rooms on that side, and it starts at 6, and I think it goes all the way until like 9 o'clock or something. I think the presentation is 7:25. Between 6 and whatever, you do mingling and get to handshake people, get to know them, and all that good stuff. Kind of a social thing. So it starts at 6 o'clock.
What about staying? And what's going to be the rule for that? Doing that instead of coming to class that
Well, that's you guys aren't going to affect you because you get out early enough.
No, your next class. I mean the next one too.
Yeah, 110. Yeah, 110. Basically won't be able to go to it, but
Okay, I didn't know if it was.
you could start going to it.
There,
You could go in there and mingle and all that good stuff, right? And eat probably, but you're going to miss the presentation.
Oh yeah.
If I'd have known about it ahead of time, I would have just said, "Oh, we'll just dismiss and everybody playing going and whatever. $5.
Is
Not
there a
that bad.
Thursday that we're missing?
Do I know?
Never mind. Is it this Thursday that's happening?
It's this Thursday.
Isn't
Yep.
there going to be a Thursday that we're going to be just doing?
There is for your research topic. Yep, definitely. But they come out every semester, so it was just one of those deals. They put it in our box late, so no biggie. But I thought I'd announce it to you guys for this class anyway, if you want to go, because they're actually talking about network security in the presentation. So I thought it'd be right up your guys' alley. All right. So we're going to look at vulnerabilities this week. We're going to actually look at, you got chapter 4 we're going to be going over, review questions for chapter 4. The lab for this week is on access point spoofing. We're going to be specifically doing a hardwired spoofing on Thursday. We're going to be spoofing a MAC and IP address using that commercial product I talked about last week. And when you start the lab, you have to download a program that we'll have to uninstall when the lab's over. But once we start the program, we basically push a couple buttons in the app, and what it does is it spoofs everybody's IP and MAC address to be one MAC and one IP address in the entire room. And so we'll talk about how it does that. We'll talk about ART poisoning is the technology used to do that. We'll talk about how you can guard against that in your network from happening. But it is fairly popular things that hackers do to get into a network by spoofing a valid IP or MAC address. So we're going to look at some vulnerabilities this week in the chapter and look at assessing organization and why it's important to assess. Look at some techniques of assessing, tools that you can be used, difference between vulnerability scanning and penetration testing. So, and then some techniques to mitigate and deter attacks. So the first is vulnerability assessment in general is basically a systematic evaluation of asset exposure from attackers, force of nature, or any potential harmful entity. Now, attackers you can guard against as best you can. Force of nature, not so much. So that's where you're talking about recovery plan, disaster recovery plan. We do have a disaster recovery plan here on campus. What we do is we take our backup tapes to Colorado. There's a campus HP has, and we have about 4 people that fly out there. And within a 24-hour period of time, they restore backup, set up a couple voice over IP phones, and then same thing here in Rockford in another location, do the same thing. And within 24 hours, have shops set up in an alternate location just to practice, hey, if this whole campus was to burn down, there isn't a contingency plan of places to go and buildings to go to around the Rockford area. It's a grant of about $2 million a year that's written for this backup recovery plan. It is by HP, all the hardware and everything's, and even the technology used to perform it. And so it's pretty cool, and we've been doing it for the last 10 years. Every year we do it in the summer, and about 4 people go there, and about 4 people go here in Rockford, and within 24 hours, everything's restored. But most companies don't have that. Yeah, go ahead.
Is there any way to be a part of that? To like see how it operates?
Good question. They've never opened it up, and I think it's probably for security purposes, I'm guessing. But yeah, it'd be awesome to do that, to be a part of that. I'll ask. I will ask. It wouldn't hurt to ask.
That would be really
And see if
nice.
maybe a student or two could do that. That'd be awesome. I agree. It would be cool for you guys to be part of that. I was a part of one here in Rockford, but not Colorado. But either one would be cool. If you're part of one here in Rockford, would be awesome. But most companies will talk about what that is in disaster recovery and why most companies don't do it. And there's also monies out there available for companies to get a disaster recovery plan because the government looks at it as a win-win for them, because if it's paying for hardware and training on a company that says 100 employees, 150 employees, they're going to fork out some money if you put the paperwork in and do all the work to fill out the grant, because they know that's 150 people they're not going to get taxes from for a while until they get back into work. And so the faster they get people back into work, the better for them. And so there is public and private monies available for companies. We'll talk about that. So systematic evaluation, attackers, force of nature, any potential harmful entity. And then secondly, the aspects of vulnerability assessment are to what's called an asset identification, threat evaluation, vulnerability appraisal, risk assessment, and then risk mitigation. So asset identification, basically where you tag everything and inventory everything. There's a piece of software I definitely recommend. See if I can write this with my finger on the screen here. Spiceworks. Anybody heard of that?
Yeah.
Spiceworks.com. Jot that down, because that is a great app that you can download at work or home, and it'll inventory your network in 24 hours. All hardware is connected to it. It'll give you IP addresses of switches, computers, mobile devices, printers. And what's cool about it is, if it's a known product, like a popular product, it'll also capture a lot of other information. And what you can do with that is, once it's inventoried everything, you can then upload files like a PDF of the warranty of that piece of equipment. That way, when something goes wrong or that equipment dies, you can go to Spiceworks and download that PDF and, cover that piece of equipment. It's totally free to use, spiceworksis.com. They do have a free version and a paid version. The free version has ads that go on your website. The free one doesn't have ads. It's got about 150,000 IT professionals a part of this system. That what's cool about it as well is if you have a question, say you have a printer, HP printer that's going out on you in this whatever model, you can literally type that in a search and probably come up with a solution, because somebody out of those 150,000 IT professionals came up with a solution to help you. And then vice versa, when you have an issue, you can also submit it as well. It also has a built-in ticketing system for help desk. It uses VNC. You can put it on the shortcut of your desktop of all your workers, and they can just click on it and you get help desk and ticketing system automatically set up. And so spiceworks.com, it's got tons of other features, by the way, but those are the top two features I'd recommend you playing with. And you can install it at home, because what it does is installs it on your computer, and then it installs a web server to run, and then a database, and then starts collecting all of the hardware information on your network. It won't take that long on your home network, but at work it could take a while. So that type of tool would help you create an asset list and tie money to it. How much does each one of these cost? Yeah.
So you can see everything that, if I'm on my iPad, I can see what websites I'm going on, right? Or no?
You can actually, it doesn't do any, the new one might do it. It's been about a year since I played with it. They were talking about putting some type of filter type thing in it, but at the time it was just purely inventory and help desk.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you can tell if somebody's in your network from like the neighbor and see if what they're visiting and doing.
Well, if they're connected to your network, you'll be able to see it, because it'll capture that.
That's what,
Yeah, it definitely will.
Okay.
It'll capture their
On
IP
my
address.
iPad, on my network, and then I can.
Yeah, it'll capture their IP address and tell them what time they connected, what time they came off and came on, all the good stuff. It will definitely do that for you.
Can you see what they look in the web browser?
I don't know if it does that or not. All I've ever used it for is strictly inventory purposes. They talked about including what activity the people are doing, but I don't think that's out yet.
So you
if I'm
can
not
tell
mistaken.
who's connected to your network and what time like that.
Right, who's connected, what their IP address is, and you can determine from that if it's one of your machines. Yeah, definitely.
I wonder if you can block that too.
Block what?
The other IP. Let's say if your neighbor's jumping onto your network.
Oh yeah, we'll go over that this semester. You can actually block computers via MAC address filtering on your Wi-Fi access point, and we'll talk about that this semester. And that'd probably be the best way for home users to do it. That way, there's only X amount of MAC addresses on your access point that are allowed in. Everything else is not. And we'll help you with that. But first thing is getting asset inventory and tying a dollar number to each asset. So switches, printers, servers, computers, laptops, mobile devices. Then some more common assets that you need to assess is and identify as people, physical assets, data, hardware, and software. So those are some of the categories of assets that you need to put a economic value to it for your place of business. Determine what each item's relative value is. The asset's critical. Is it critical to the organization? What is that criticality to the organization? That'll depend on how much money is thrown at it. How much revenue does it generate? How difficult it is to replace it? The impact if this asset's unavailable. So if it's a database that ran your entire shop, that's critical. All right. If it's a access application somebody's using to run a task they do every day, that's not critical. All right. So you have to guide, whether or not these things are critical or not. And then you could also rank them on a numeric scale of, 1 to 10, 1 being least critical, 10 being most critical. Then you can do what's called a threat evaluation, where you look at your place of business and your network, and you make a list of potential threats that could attack your location and where those weaknesses are. Now, here's where it comes into people outside your organization. It's good to use outside folks in this case, because regardless how honest or unbiased you are, you're going to have some bias because it's your network. Okay. It's your kids, right? It's your family. So you're going to be a little biased about that and maybe look stuff over a little bit than you should. So then it's worth hiring somebody to come do it. Now that does cost. It's not cheap if they're good at what they do. An average assessment of a medium-sized business is about 80 grand. About 80 grand to do a security assessment. And that's, coming in on every area of your organization, and then creating a report and giving them recommendations for how to follow up. You say it might be a lot of money, but let's say the company makes $50 million a year. It's not a lot of money. And so it helps the company determine really where they're at.
And is this where you said it takes like a week to go ahead and do the assessment?
Yeah.
A week to write everything?
Roughly. Roughly a week for medium-sized. When I say medium-sized, 100, 150 people. A week to come in and look at everything from door access, server access, your equipment, your software, your computers, laptop, whatever it is. They look at everything, and then they put together a report and say, here's your weaknesses, here's our recommendations. And it's up to the company to, look at those recommendations. You could take some and say yeah, and take some and go no. But it's an assessment, basically is what it is. So now when you take a car to a mechanic, they go, okay, I know you wanted this, this, and this done, but here's this, this, and this. If you get it done now, it'll really help you. Well, yeah, do this and this, but forget about that and that. I'm not going to do that right now. So it's the same deal businesses have to come up with. What's important, Is my car going to fall apart if I don't do this? If it does, okay, yeah, let's do it. Let's get it done. If I can wait, I'm going to wait. Same thing with businesses, they do the same thing. So the next is, listing potential threats is important to get outside folks sometimes. And then threat modeling, same deal. The goal here is to understand attackers and their methods. Because sometimes when these assessors come in, what's cool about it, and I've been through a number of them, is they show you things, you're like, I never even saw that. That's, you feel kind of bad. You're like, okay, I'm stupid, right? You're not. It's just like we all have blinders on things that we're a part of every day, right? And somebody goes, did you hear what somebody said? Did you hear what they just said? No. They say that every day. What are you talking about? Well, that's not good, right? And so, it's good to have somebody come in, fresh eyes, fresh ears, totally outside the business to help and understand some attackers that might have. Like an example was, one of them was the Wi-Fi was close to a road, and the folks could access it and hacked into it in no time at all. It was granted it was not connected to anything critical, but it could have been, and we locked it down, we changed it, and so that was a real situation that they came up with that was valid. And then often also done by constructing scenarios, which they did in this case. They went out in the road with their laptop, said, we'll be back in 5 minutes. Oh, is this your access point? Oh, is this what's in there? Well, how'd you get to it? We hacked it in 30 seconds. That's what they did. And so that's a valid assessment worth definitely the money on what they did. And so, we just had to change SSID, change the security to be greater and the password to be greater. And then they tried it again and couldn't hack into it. And so the next is an attack tree, providing a visual representation of how attack could happen. And then what's called is an inverted one, which it should show here in a second. You'll see in a second an inverted attack tree. But here's some categories of threats and examples. You've heard of these and been a part of these maybe. Natural disaster like a fire, flood, earthquake. They don't have in here tornado, but I was brought up near Joplin, Missouri. You might have heard of that huge tornado that hit that and wiped out a quarter of the town a few years back. Devastated. It hit on a Sunday afternoon, thank God. So it wasn't a lot of people weren't in business and schools weren't schools in session because the high school was totally wiped out. So it happened on a Sunday, like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And so it would have happened on a Monday. It would have lost, estimated of about almost 1 million folks could have been killed if they were in the locations that they were supposed to be in at that time of day. Because they're truckers and all that good stuff, delivery guys, whatever. So compromise of intellectual property, software is pirated. Now, believe it or not, there is a hotline you can call, and I will email that to our group. I don't have it on my top of my head right now, but there's a hotline you can call to turn in a whistleblower, basically, for software piracy in your place of business. And the reason you say, why does that happen? Yeah, it does. And where IT is a lot of times is they're put in a situation to where they have to, are told to use software that's out of compliance. Well, it's your job and you need a job, but you don't feel right doing it. It's just illegal to do it. Here's where the whistleblower thing comes in. There have been a couple firms here in town that have had, big firms, I won't give names, but have had whistleblowers and have been fined in the range of $100,000 for being out of compliance. And they could afford the software upgrades, but they didn't do it right. So instead of having a license for 100, they license for 50, stuff like that. So, but intellectual property on software piracy and copyright infringement, that's a threat because it costs companies money if you're found to be guilty. If groups come in, bless you, there's both public and private entities that manage police software piracy, by the way. The other is espionage, spy stealing production schedule, extortion, mail clerk is blackmailed into intercepting letters, hardware failure or errors, firewall blocks all network traffic. And maybe you will say it's during a day where during a time of day where there's a lot of transactions. Human error, an employee drops a laptop in the parking lot. Sabotage or vandalism, attacker implants a worm that erases files. Software attack, virus, worm, or denial of service compromises hardware or software. Software failure or errors, a bug prevents program from properly loading. Technical obsolescence, program does not function under new operating system. That's happened a lot lately with folks moving from Windows XP to 7 or 8. And then theft, desktop system stolen from an unlocked room. And then utility interruption, electric power is cut off. So here's a grid of a attack tree for stealing a car stereo. So the asset here is a car stereo. And so you'll notice at the very bottom, you've got level 4 here, bribe attendant, or blackmail attendant, or threaten attendant. Level 3, make a copy of the key. Level 3 also, grab a purse. A level 2 attack would be carjack or break glass, or the summation of the level 3 and 4, stealing a key. Finally getting to level 1 of getting to the stereo. The point is, there's many ways to skin a cat, right? Many ways to do it. And this just shows you all the different ways. So the seed in your area, the asset could be your database of all your customers. It could be your diagrams of all of your products that have patents. It could be a number of things, and then you just list how those things could be attacked. It's, I guess, naive to say it can't be attacked. Very much naive to say it can't be attacked. So there is ways everything can be attacked in some form or fashion. All right. Another one here is accessing student grade system, right in your guys' neck of the woods. So level 3 would be some type of software exploitation in a security hole of the grading system software, looking over the shoulder of a teacher to get a password, or over a mouse pad, under a mouse pad, which is sad to say, working in high school. Haven't seen this much in college, but in high school I saw this all the time, where I would walk up to an English teacher or a sociology teacher or a science teacher, and they'd have their username and password literally on a sticky note on the monitor. No, for everybody to see. And so level three went over. Level 2, use an unattended computer. You just walk right up to the person that's grading, and they went to go lunch or something, and their computer's right there to get access to it. Then defeat the security by guessing a password, steal password, and then finally accessing the student grade system. So again, many different ways to get to it, and you just have to logically look at those ways. And then vulnerability assessment is basically determining what your current weaknesses are. And this is where it's very helpful to have an outside folks look at your system. All right. And actually in school is a good time now to learn a network of people, because I have had students that have left Rock Valley, graduated, and went on to bigger and better things. I had one that moved to Florida in a school district. He was an IT guy. Needed a vulnerability assessment, called on somebody from Rock Valley that he knew that was going to be there for vacation. And during his vacation, he spent a half a day assessing his network for him and gave him a report of what he saw. And it helped him a lot and saved him a lot of money too. And he fed him and went out that night with him and had a good time, but it didn't cost him 80 grand. And now granted, was it exhaustive as spending 80 grand? Probably not, but at least it was better than nothing, which we'll talk about as well tonight. So having a vulnerability assessment determines your current weaknesses. It's a snapshot of your security right now, good, bad, and ugly. All right, which all businesses have. Every asset should be viewed in the light of each threat, and categorize them. And this is where you use a whiteboard on an iPad or on a physical board, however you want to do it, however the group feels comfortable. If you're doing it yourself or just to play with it, because we've done a number of them. And then what we've done is, over the years and the different places I've been, done our own, and then have somebody outside do it and then compare our notes. There's some we were spot on with what they found. There's some they find like, we didn't see that, right? And so that's going to happen. Risk assessment, determining damage resulting from attack, assessing likelihood that could happen again, or that it's a risk at all to your organization. This one just goes into some scenarios of impact scale from no impact to catastrophic. For no impact would be it would have no effect on your organization. Somebody steals a mouse. Okay, if that causes your organization to stop, you better rethink things. All right. Small impact, producing limited periods of inconvenience. Maybe an example is here: a specific brand and type of hard disk drive fails that might require that a spare hard drive be available to put in place of that. Significant vulnerability that results in a loss of employee productivity due to downtime or causes a capital outlay to alienate or to alleviate. It could be considered significant. This one's malware that causes a problem. Shuts down the mail system, we'll say. Major vulnerabilities, those that have considerable negative impact. This will be the theft of the latest product research development through a back door, could be considered a major vulnerability. And then catastrophic would be events that would cause the organization to cease functioning altogether, and this would be like a tornado hitting your building, or buildings plural. 9/11, catastrophic, right? The good thing about 9/11, you say there was nothing good, but there was a lot of good things. But one of the good things that happened out of it was most of the companies that were in that building had external outside backups that were done. It wasn't in-house. And so that was a good thing for those companies. Yes.
Were they using the cloud at that time at all for backing stuff up?
We weren't in the cloud, but we were in. They had direct connections, so these are big companies, right? All these companies were huge companies, and so they literally have direct lines to somebody, some down the street or next city or whatever, to where they actually had it backed up. Yeah. So the next is what's called single loss expectancy (SLE). This is expected monetary loss each time a risk occurs, calculated by multiplying the asset value by exposure value. And then the exposure factor is percentage of asset value likely to be destroyed or particular risk. Now, just so you know, there is tons of jobs in this field of network assessment, security assessment. Literally, like an example would be Heartland or Hartford Insurance here in Illinois, McDonald's here in Illinois, the corporate down south. If you look on Monster or Dice.com, for network security risk analyst, tons of jobs. Okay, because the type of people that like these jobs, by the way, love numbers. They love stats. They love, they love network. They love network security in general, but they love, numbers and putting reports together with numbers. So if you're a numbers guy or a numbers gal and you love putting stuff together number wise, you might look into that field of study because. As far as backbone education that you would need would definitely be network security as much as you can take here on campus between this class and Cisco, and getting certification in network security plus, and then getting on with the internship with a firm that does risk analysis, because it is a very highly growing field in network security, as being an analyst for risk assessment. And that's all they do all day long is you get paid good money to look at what's wrong with your company and meet with all the divisions and say, here's what we got to do to make it right. You also have to have a pretty good backbone and be able to handle kickback, because you're going to get a lot of it all the time. Because when they see you coming, it's usually not good news. Okay? And so you have to be able to handle it. Not everybody can handle that. It's not for everybody, but for some of you, it might be right up your alley. You just love to do that. So ALE is we did the single loss. This is annual loss. Like say annual loss goes into let's talk about retail for a second. On annual loss, Walmart has an X amount of dollars each year that they say they're going to lose because of theft. They just mark it up. This is what we think we're going to lose. This is what we lost last year. This is what we're going to lose next year. Companies budget that in, like Walmart. Sears, same thing. JCPenney, same thing. Any large chain is going to do that. Now, for a small mom and pop shop business of 150 people, they'll also have annual loss. Okay, their annual loss will be such as employees that they'll lose because of death. If you have, employees over 40 and plus, 50 and plus, you're going to lose that. That is a loss to the company, because you have to hire sometimes two people to fill the shoes of one person that might have been there for 30 years, possibly. And so that is something you have to, so maybe not theft for companies that are small. It might be, losing an employee. It might also be losing customers because of a database was lost in a field somewhere from a field service guy, and the customer's information was leaked. And so you're going to have to hire a lawyer to do, due diligence to kind of make everybody happy, and then do training and all that costs. So, it might be $150,000, $200,000 to make that all go away. And so there's some expected loss that can happen depending on your organization. Also, estimated probability that vulnerability will actually occur. Say 30% chance it could occur, 20%, 10% chance. You got to put a percentage on it. And then what they talk about then is risk mitigation, determining what to do about these risks that we have now. We have these 10 risks, and they're all percentage level risk. Determine how much risk can be tolerated. And here's the options you can do with these risks. You can diminish them, like we did in the Wi-Fi scenario. We made the security better and the password stronger. And we also weakened the signal to where it wasn't going beyond the building as far as it was before. So we could diminish it that way. Transfer it by like outsourcing or insurance. Buy more insurance. We're not going to be able to do anything about it. Let's see if we can get a plan to cover this if this happens. All right, you can do that, and or just accept it, eat it. I call it eat it. Just eat it. It's going to happen. You have to deal with it. We can't really do anything about it. We don't think it's worth doing anything about. Not that you couldn't. It's not worth it. Okay, and so every organization is going to be different in what they choose to do. Critical stuff definitely are going to try to either diminish or transfer. Non-critical things like the 10% stuff, the 5% stuff on risk, we're just going to accept it. It could happen. People can steal a mouse. People might steal a computer. But say, what about the database being stolen? Okay, we're going to maybe get some insurance on that. Maybe get some law firm in here to help us with some wording on our emails that we have put out every day. Because if you notice the companies have these big old long footers right at the bottom of their email, you're like, okay, I'm just asking about what time you're open. Okay, I don't need a big disclaimer. And you think, they send that to everybody? Yes, they send it to everybody. And who writes that stuff? Lawyers write that stuff, right? You have a whole bunch of disclaimers in there of things that are not responsible for, And granted, you're like, okay, I'm just asking for the hours of business. That's it. But they send it to everybody. That way, if something was to happen, it could be a deal like, say, $10 million. And because of that email, somebody backed out on their contract, the company's covered now because all their transactions have at the bottom of that email, and they can prove it with that email trail, those transactions. Does that make sense? But you and I can't make up stuff like that. I mean, I could, but it'd be gibberish. I could do the best I could, but copy and pasting stuff, but that's not my expertise. I'm going to hire a lawyer to do that. And granted, it might cost 10 grand to do it, but it'd be worth it. It would save the company $1 million or whatever. And so stuff like that needs to be discussed to diminish maybe. Here is some risk identification actions. I'll just mention here the top and bottom. The top one is asset identification, inventorying the assets, determining the assets' relative value, all the way down to the bottom one, which we just touched on, which was risk assessment and risk mitigation. Risk assessment is estimating the impact of vulnerability on organization, calculating the loss, if there was some, and then estimating the probability this could happen, put a percentage on it. Then the last one is the most important of what are you going to do with it? Diminish these risks, transform, or accept them. So here's what the companies will give you, or if you do one yourself, like a self-reporting, which is beneficial to do. And you'll actually do one, by the way, this semester on the network security. You'll assess the network security of your username and password here on campus in all entities through Eagle, online services, what you think about it. What is there risk in there? What do you see the risks are? So you'll go through these steps yourself this semester. And you'll come up with a baseline report basically of what standard for other businesses of your size and your scope and how much money they make. Here's what they did, or here's what they had to do to cover their butts and to get things right. So there's baselines. There's other businesses like yours that you can use for a baseline, basically. Compare present state to a baseline. So here's where we're at. Here's where company A, B, and C's at. That's our competitor. We want to make sure we're at least at that level, if not a little better than they are, just in case. Does that make sense? And so you can find baseline reporting through folks that you hire, or if you know a friend that's a competitor, which sometimes you will in IT, you can just ask them, we're going through this. What did you guys do? What was your weaknesses? Would you mind sharing that report? So if you're their friend, they might share it with you because, they trust you. That's not going to always happen, but I've had it happen before. And that's why I think it's always good in IT, regardless of where you work, over your span of life in IT, to never burn your bridges as much as possible. That way you can always go back and make those calls on what I just mentioned or any other tool you might need. It's always nice to have that. Not always possible, but if you can do that, that's awesome. And then note and evaluate possible differences between your business and that baseline business, because there's going to be differences. Okay, well, you guys you guys make widgets for this device. We make, you know, hydraulic systems for Caterpillar. Totally separate issue, totally separate environment. So it's going to be different in their assessment of stuff. So you just throw that stuff out. Not apples and oranges, basically. Then you've got what's called application development techniques, which that's one of the areas I'm in a lot, is minimizing vulnerabilities during software development. That takes time because the expertise you're relying upon during software development is your users, which sometimes they're users and they don't really understand vulnerabilities. And so that's where you might need as well somebody that does understand vulnerabilities to hire that firm or that programmer to come in and look at your code and go, okay, this looks good, but this you got to fix because of this. So I've done that before over the years as well. Software is a little bit different. It doesn't take as long because it's software, and might take a few days versus a few weeks to assess. And then challenges, though, to approach in software are, okay, how big the application size is. If it's 1 million lines of code, it's going to take much longer than if it's only 10,000 lines of code. And the average Office application is about 1 million lines of code or more, between 1 million and 3 million lines of code. And so it could take a few days to do that. Then lack of security specifications within the app. Future attack techniques might be unknown. Those are things to take into effect. And then on software development as well, reviewing design architecture requirements, doing what's called design reviews, including a consultant, conducting code review, where you have a consultant come and look at your code or ship it out and have them look at it, correcting bugs during the verification phase, and then distributing updates when necessary, and making sure those updates are applied. Because an update is only as good as those who apply it. Like let's talk about your businesses that have every business should have some antivirus software running. Be surprised how many businesses though have their DAT files weeks out of date, months out of date, maybe years out of date. What's the sense of having it? Right? Same thing with critical updates, security updates on servers. 30%, we're in 30% compliance in the US right now, meaning 30% of businesses are in compliance with the latest security updates. Because I don't know if you might have seen this on softwares or say you installed operating system recently or the last year or two. One of the last steps in that installment is, would you mind sending Microsoft, issues about your software so we can fix things? And it does it behind the scenes. One of the things it sends is where you're at with your security updates, and they create a report of that. And in the U.S., we're about 30% compliance right now. Me and hackers know that, so that means 70% of the companies in the U.S. have multiple backdoors because of security updates not being applied. And what's really scary is, what if a hacker got a hold of one of those reports from Microsoft and knew all these businesses and what updates they haven't applied? That'd be pretty bad. And so it wouldn't take much to destroy a lot of companies if that list was in the hands of hackers.
Does
So
30% seem ridiculously low to you? I mean, do you think that that's an accurate number still?
30% are in compliance, 70% are out of compliance.
Right. Do you think that that's?
You gotta remember, a lot of people get overworked, being lazy or whatever.
Yeah,
So,
I think it's actually very low, but doesn't surprise me. And that's taking all the companies in the U.S. Right? It's taking all the companies, 30%. And that was actually released last October, and that's server OS is 30% compliance. That's crazy. And what that means is, people don't think it's that important, or they've had issues in the past of applying updates, and they're scared of applying these updates. And so there's a number of reasons. It could also be manpower, because when you do critical updates on any server, you better test it. And what's that tell you? If they're not doing it, they're not able to test it, so they're not going to apply it. They're not just going to be we've been out of compliance for a couple of years. Let's just on the weekend do it. Let's just get it done. I'm not going to do that. Okay, that could shut everything down. And so it takes time to go through the testing. It might take weeks or months to go through the testing. And if they're already on a skeleton crew, which a lot of IT departments are, you can understand why they're not in compliance. But that report goes out, and it is what it is. And so back to software development. This just gives a timeline. Only thing you need to note on this one is um, there is, like say at the very left, it talks about a list of features that the app has, requirements, all the way to the end, which will be most critical for our discussion, which is using the, I'll expand this out, security updates. Making sure that your application that you're developing in-house has the security updates it needs to run safely on your network. So let's talk about some assessment tools. Assessment tools, one of them is Spiceworks, I mentioned earlier. Spiceworks not only categorizes everything on your network, but it also tells you what's out of sync with updates. It'll give you a list of them. What's cool about Spiceworks as well is it'll also give you what you're out of date in a PC or a server, but it'll give you a link to update that information or update that machine, which is awesome. So you don't have to go searching for it; it's all done for you. The other tool that is Microsoft Baseline Securities. MSB basically scans all your networks to see and computers to see what compliance is, and then you can use that. There's a managed version that you can actually push those updates out. So assessment tools, IP addresses uniquely identify to each network device. In the TCP IP communication, looking at to make sure that information that is connecting your hardware devices are diagrammed somewhere, it's written down somewhere. And then port numbers, all of those, and you know what's open and what's closed, and have a list constantly of what is. Some well-known port numbers like port 25 for SMTP, port 21 for FTP, port 80 for web, and say you have a whole bunch of ports that are open on your server that you don't need open, you close them. You don't need them, you close them because those are ports that hackers can use to get into your network. Be careful on that because every application, well not every application, but a lot of applications use certain port numbers to do communication, and it'll tell you in that application what those port numbers are. Yes.
Is there a way to go through your apps and see which ports you're using?
Yeah, it'll actually. There's software you can run to determine what executable is using what port numbers. Yes, you can.
There's nothing that Microsoft has that's out.
The MSB baseline will give you an IP address, and it will give you all the ports that are open. It doesn't give you tied to the executable though, but there are free utilities that do allow you to do that. Definitely. Then with port numbers, all you need to know is whatever list of software you have, and you find out what the list of port numbers that they use. All other ports, for the most part, should be locked down. Okay, should be closed down and not used. And you can do that within your Active Directory and also within your network setup. So here's some popular ports mentioned. Port 21 already, FTP, Secure Shell for file transfer, port 22, Telnet 23, TFTP, this is Secure File Transfer, Secure FTP, 69, port 80s, Web, NetBIOS 139, 443, Secure HTTPS. These are all things, ports you would generally need open, unless you're not using FTP, you would close those. But if you were to block down, let's say 443, people could go to secure websites, and that wouldn't be good. And so there's some things you're going to have a list of ports you're going to have open for your place to work. Knowledge of what ports are being used, already mentioned that, port scanners. A lot of port scanners that are out there that'll go out and basically just look at your network, see what ports are open, see what ports are closed. We'll cover a number of them this semester. and 3 states of ports: open, closed, and blocked. Radmin is one here, the advanced port scanner. You can put in a list of IP ranges and then scan those IP ranges to run, and only those IP ranges to run. And what's cool is it'll actually give you, you can expand one of the IPs, it'll tell you how many open ports and exactly what those ports are that are open. And you're like, well, you know, we blocked port 21, so why in the world does that IP address have port 21 open? That's a red flag. Okay. Either they used the software that unblocked it or they hacked into it and unblocked it themselves on that machine. But either one's not good. So you have to find out about it. On this one, all I want you to read about is the stealth scanning. In IT, we use this a lot. A stealth scan is various techniques to avoid detection. Because one of the things you don't want to do in IT when you're doing penetration testing on somebody's computer is for them to know you're doing it. That's not a good thing. Because you want to catch them doing whatever they're doing. And so if there's any pop-ups or slowness or whatever, or weirdness about their connection, they're going to maybe notice it and stop doing it. And so a stealth scan will scan a list of computers or a computer itself. And basically one technique here is to scan slowly over several days to avoid detection. Another technique is to flood the target with spoof scans and embed one scan from the real source address. But there's a number of tools we'll talk about this semester. I'll recommend some as the semester goes on that I use. But just note stealth is a popular one. I like to use anything that's stealth on a network and doesn't impede the users. It's searching. Protocol analyzers, we used one of these last week, basically. When you're firing up a protocol analyzer, Ethereal was one that came up, and then advanced to the one we're using now. EtherApe's another one. On the Linux side, it's called EtherApe. It actually has a visual analyzer that actually sees like a radar on a weather map of all the IP addresses. But basically, this one captured all the packets. It's also called a sniffer. Common uses for port analyzer, used by network admins for troubleshooting, characterizing network traffic, security analysis on a target IP address. So here we have EtherDetect, which basically does the same thing. The app that we used last week, Protocol Analyzer, where it scans IP addresses, and then you can expand them and see the actual packet blown up. So attackers, what they use is what we used last week. And so, you know, we go to your computer that we fired up last week. Everybody get a chance to play with that, by the way, at all? Fire up, download it. Recommend doing that.
Wait, downloading what? I wasn't here last week.
Wireshark. Downloading Wireshark and then playing with it at home, because that's the only way you're going to get used to using it. There is a handout I'm giving you Thursday, by the way, on shortcuts for Wireshark and little tips and tricks on Wireshark that will help you get started. Last week we just did a simple port scan or a scan and went to an IP address, saw the HTTP traffic of a certain IP that we clicked on, a certain website, and captured that in the get command, I believe. But there's a lot of different products out there, free and paid both. The one we use looks a lot like this one. This one actually is Accutex Web Vulnerability Scanner. It scans and alerts. Oops, sorry. It scans and alerts the network admin of vulnerabilities that could be on that network. So like this one here, let me blow it up to the bottom one here. This one actually has built-in knowledge base, meaning if you have something it recognizes that's oddity, it'll actually give you a knowledge base. This one talks about Ajax, which is a web utility or web component for apps to run and couldn't do some malicious things. So example, vulnerability capabilities, alert people when stuff happens. An example here on IT I'll end with is we do have on all of our servers in IT a piece of software running that when it begins to ping below such and such a number, the IT folks are alerted. They were basically it's text message to them now. Years ago it was a beeper. Now it's a text message. It'll actually tell them what servers are going down. And what I mean by that is, say, a healthy server will ping when you ping it in, say, under a millisecond. It'll ping back. Let's say it starts slowing down to where it takes 5 milliseconds to come back or 10 milliseconds to come back. The IT can bar it wherever they want to. Say, if it gets to 5, you alert this group of IT people. And whoever's on call that night, which, by the way, in IT, somebody in this size of organization is on call 24/7 every night of the week. So whoever's on call calls a help desk person and says, "Oh, Connie, could you go over to this server and restart it?" That's generally 99% of the time what they do. Yes.
Is this where it shows that it's like hung up on something and that's why you reboot it?
Yes.
When it starts getting.
Right. It could be hung up on something, or it could just be a heavy activity. So somebody could be downloading something on the server that should be downloading.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense? So IT has a decision to make at that time. Here at dinner time, do I log in and start searching for this kid that's downloading when he shouldn't, or just have him restart the server? And like I said, most of the time it's just restart the server. And that's long enough. Now if it starts up again, the second protocol is you log in and you start, if you have to, call security and have them go to that location. We've had to do that before too. And there is, by the way, protocols in place to where, say if the person in the IT room notices and is alerted by software we do have running on campus that somebody's searching child pornography, there is protocol to where the police is called immediately, and within a minute and a half, that person is taken in custody and in a cop car and taken off campus in a minute and a half from whatever the time it was that they reported. That's what the time that they want it done. And so, because that is something, well, by law with FERPA, and we have to watch very closely. Everything else on campus is, we pretty much have no filters on, for as far as impeding students or faculty from searching breast cancer or whatever the case may be, because, they're just going to have to search for stuff that maybe filters would block. And so, for educational purposes. But for stuff that's not educational purpose, like child pornography, those folks are obtained quickly. And there is a guy on campus, that's all he does. One of his jobs is, not all he does, big part of his job is scanning the network for such activity as that. Since we don't have filters that block, we have to have somebody that does that full time pretty much. And that's all he does. And so he sees a lot of interesting images coming across his screen, I'm guessing. Because he has like 12 monitors in his office. He's constantly watching all the time. And he can switch and see, he can put in like a keyword or keywords, a filter type thing where he sees when a word comes up on somebody's computer, it switches to his monitor immediately, one of his monitors, and alerts him. So he can start looking at their activity. Now, it's not blocking what they're doing, but it's filtering what they're doing. And, again, if it's something that, they're searching for educational purposes, they can find that pretty quick if they are. So when you're assessing things, there are within the assessment pieces, like I just mentioned, that will come up that every business has to talk about. And one of them would be, what's our rules on web filtering? Okay. Education facilities are different than businesses. Businesses they can web filter anything they want to. So a private business. Public entities like ourselves have to be careful because we're a public entity. Same with libraries. There's certain filters we can't put on except for filters for child pornography. We can put filters on for that for sure, and we do. Everything else pretty well lifted to search and to go on social media, which is annoying for instructors, I know, during the class time in some classes. Kids, Facebook or Twitter on their computers. Well, yeah, it's annoying, but that's not illegal. Okay, it's annoying. You can manage it by saying, quit going on Twitter during my class time. Okay, something like that. But whatever it is, assessing your vulnerabilities, looking at the risk and then saying, okay, what are we going to do with these risks? Is what basic IT needs to do at least on a yearly basis. And I told you we talk about why it's not done. I told you I'd end with that. The reason it's not done mainly is money. Okay, people don't have money. IT departments don't have the money, manpower to do what we're talking about tonight, assessing, because you've got 5 projects on your plate, you've got 10 projects, you've got 2 that's due this week, you've got 3 coming up next week. Who's got the time in-house to do it? Nobody. Okay, so because of that, we have to shell out money for somebody from outside to come in, and if nothing's going wrong, you could take it before your board or the financial folks and say, well, this is a waste of money. Isn't everything going okay? Well, yeah, but we want to make sure everything's going to keep going okay. That's not good enough. So what IT managers have to do, and I've had to do it a number of times, is create a report, a real nice report that puts in there a little bit of fear on what could happen. Real life stories about local businesses, regional businesses like your own. Hey, they didn't have this, and here's what happened. Well, we don't want that to happen. What do we have to do? Okay, so by showing them honest, and yeah, you're feeding it there on purpose for them to see it, stuff that happens that's bad, you can then sometimes get things funded. Not every time, but maybe 8 out of 10 get it happen. But if you don't do that and create a report that everybody can understand, regardless of what their technical expertise is, if you create a report that says, okay, we need this, this, and this. We need brand new servers. We need to update our door access to all of our server rooms because they haven't been updated in 5 years, and you can just kick it and open it. Okay? Well, we have proximity cards, yeah, but if you can kick it, what's the matter? We have proximity cards. You just kick it and open it. You don't need a proximity card. And so stuff like that, just practical stuff that does cost money, but you say, okay, let me tell you about a business that this is what happened to them because they didn't update their servers, didn't update their doors, the proximity doors. This is what happened. They lost their 10 clients last year. They had to drop 10 employees, and now they're talking about bankruptcy because data was stolen. And so here's a plan I found. Here's a budget that we're going to need, 50 grand to get this updated and get the training implemented. Think about it, and if you have any questions, let me know. But you give them all the data, the gory data, the good data, and then let them sit on it. And 9 times out of 10, depending on the area, maybe 8 times out of 10, you'll get it. But if you just go in there saying, I need it, most money folks are going to go, you're not getting it. Okay? I want a lot of things, but I don't get it. And so, does that make sense? So you have to do your due diligence, which is a word. Sometimes it's not taught a lot today, due diligence. And all that means basically is put your work into a nice basket. Put all of your stuff into one basket. Don't count your eggs before it's hatched. Heard that before. Also, make sure you do your due diligence on everything that's going on and show the good, bad, and ugly of your system and say, here's the critical things we need to fix. And here's why. Here's what could happen if we don't fix them. And here's the money I'm needing. Think about it. If you have any questions, let me know. Make sense? And so I've had to do it a number of times over years with CEOs, with financial folks that usually have the purse strings. And the CEO might not be the person with the purse strings, by the way, in businesses. It might be somebody else. Whoever that somebody else is, that's the person you need to convince that it's needed. Does that make sense? And so presenting before people is definitely a big thing that goes a long way when it comes to assessment. And so you will be doing here in a few weeks an assessment on our security here on campus as refers to username and password. So Thursday, we're going to be doing a lab on spoofing IP and Macs. So when you come in, you will be getting some software Thursday and a handout bowl. So bring in your binder. Other than that, we're done. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, be careful on the way home because the drivers like to take it slow, like really slow. Okay?
That's why I was.
Yeah, everybody in here said, yeah, I gotta go 5 miles an hour. Yeah.
What did we do last Thursday?
Last Thursday, we did the
Wireshark?
Wireshark. Yep.
And how do I get the program? Do you give it to me or?
No, you can just go basically to last week's lab. There's a link to download,
All right.
and the lab's in there. And you can do it on your own.
All right. And how do I get my review questions? It just shows us a mid page. I don't know what to do.
In the book.
Yeah, the review questions are the back of every chapter.
This thing, I don't have the book, that's why.
Oh yeah, you gotta have a book.
Alright.
Yeah.
I did all the tests and all that stuff.
Okay.
'cause I know how to do that, but
Now, if you want a cheaper way, if you haven't got a book yet, is like Amazon, probably a cheap way to get it.
no, I just didn't know I needed a book here.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So that's why.
Yep.
Alright, man, appreciate it.
All right.
Did we
Yep.
have
That's
a
it.
QR code today?
I did. Yep. I will definitely bring it up for you. There you go.